I live in a beige two-story on a quiet cul-de-sac in Kettering, Ohio. The kind of street where people argue about lawn heights and still wave at each other. After my wife died, the house went silent. I learned to live with it, the tick of the hallway clock, the hum of the fridge, predictable noises that said, "You're safe." Tonight, those same sounds made my skin prickle. It started as a tight fist just under my ribs. Not pain exactly, more like my body clearing its throat. I told myself it was the coffee I shouldn't have had after dinner. I rinsed the mug and set it in the rack. That's when I noticed Lily watching me from the doorway like she was measuring something I couldn't see. "Dad, you look pale," she said. "Sit, I'll make you something light." My daughter has my wife's eyes and a stranger's smile. Since she moved back temporarily, we've been circling each other, two planets, pretending gravity doesn't apply. I want to believe the best. That's my toxic little habit. I'm an enabler when it comes to family. I've always told myself it's compassion. Sometimes it's just fear of setting boundaries. "I'm fine," I said, and even to me it sounded like a lie. She stepped in, efficient. "Chicken broth, ginger. You'll feel better." Then that soft voice people use right before they push. "You trust me, right?" That line is a classic gaslighting move. Make trust the topic so you don't have to answer questions. I nodded anyway because old habits are hard to break. While she moved through the kitchen, I felt that fist tighten. A little sweat gathered at my hairline. I reached for the counter to steady myself and caught my reflection in the microwave door. A man who's been through worse and should know better. I've spent 30 years in the army and 10 learning civilian life's new vocabulary. Narcissist, toxic, trauma response. I can carry a rucksack up a hill and draft a will that holds up in probate court. What I can't do, apparently, is admit when my own house doesn't feel safe. Lily chatted while she worked. It was the performance of casual, cupboard doors, a laugh about the neighbor's dog, the soft scrape of a spoon. She wears casual the way some people wear a uniform, clean, ironed, slightly tight at the seams. "Did you ever update your beneficiary stuff?" she asked, almost singing it, like humming a song. "Mom's been gone a while." I stared at the salt cellar and counted my heartbeats. "My attorney has the latest copy." "True. Avery filed it last year. Lily's still listed." That's the part that makes me feel stupid. "Okay, just checking." The words landed with a tap, like a knuckle on glass, testing for cracks. My phone buzzed on the counter. "Unknown. How's your stomach tonight?" "Unknown." 3 steps away, Lily hummed. "Why text me from the kitchen?" I glanced up. She didn't look at her phone. She didn't need to. I put the device face down. I could feel the old dynamic crouch behind me trying to be the reasonable father, her rehearsing the part of the reasonable daughter. Reasonable is where denial lives. When my wife was sick, I built a binder labeled Essential Documents, Insurance, Bank Accounts, Medical Directives, the will, copies of statements. I taught Lily how to find the right tab, how to add written evidence every time a bill got paid. She was 12 and proud to help. I tell myself that's how you raise a responsible adult. Some nights I wonder if I handed a map to someone who only wanted the treasure. "Dad, sit," she said, softer. She touched my shoulder and steered me into the breakfast nook. The little round table faces the backyard. The privacy fence my neighbor pretends is a moral victory. Beyond it, January trees look like ink lines drawn too hard. Lily set a glass of water in front of me, and "This is new," patted my hand. "I'm sorry I wasn't around more," she said, eyes big. "I'm trying to do better. I'm trying to do better." Apologies are cheap when they float. The real ones have nouns and verbs. "I'm sorry I took your credit card" is different from "I'm sorry you feel upset." I took a sip and said nothing. Silence makes some people confess and other people compose. My body sent up another flare heat. A flutter. The suggestion that something inside me didn't like something I'd swallowed in the past hour. I replayed dinner. Rotisserie chicken, store salad. Her "You finish the legs, I'm full." I tried to remember the last time Lily ate more than a thumbnail of anything when she was here. Stress looks like appetite with its wires cut. "Remember when Mom used to make soup?" she asked. "Saltines on the side, the way you like." Her tone was nostalgia warm, but I heard the message underneath. "Relax. Lower the guardrails. Let me drive." "I remember," I said, because that much was true. Another buzz. Same number. Unknown. Rest. "You'll feel better after a little broth." I flipped my phone to do not disturb. My hand shook. I told myself it was low blood sugar and stood to get bread from the pantry, something to anchor the room. On the way, I paused at the hallway console where the clock ticks too loud when the house is tense. My wife's photo sits beside it, her smile a habit, not a performance. I touched the frame and felt stupid for the comfort it gave me. When I turned back, Lily was staring at me with a look I know from years of debriefs. Calculation, masked as concern. It vanished so fast I almost doubted I'd seen it. There's a concept my therapist, brief stint, Austin VA likes. Boundaries are love plus limits. Sounds good on a mug. Harder at a kitchen table when your kid says, "Trust me," and your gut says, "No." I took a breath and decided to do something small but new. Pay attention without explaining it away. I cataloged the room like I would a scene. The angle of the blinds, the two bowls set out near the stove, the way Lily's shoulders rose and fell too fast for someone. Relaxed. The white tile showed everything. White is great for kitchens and terrible for secrets. "Dad," she said. "Sit. I'll bring it over." My phone buzzed one more time, a different number this round. Unknown. "We'll talk soon." End quote. C. I didn't know a C. The message felt like a cold coin on the back of the neck. I screenshotted it, sent it to myself, and titled the email, "Kitchen, 9:13 p.m. Unknown. C. Stupid. Paranoid. Maybe. Or maybe it's what you do when you've spent a career learning that memory is a bad witness and paper is a good one. I slid the phone into my pocket and sat, palms flat on the table. I could taste metal. Lily's footsteps approached light, practiced. The cadence of someone who wants to sound helpful. "You're going to be okay," she said. And the way she said it made every part of me want to argue. I smiled instead and watched her set the bowls down. The kitchen smelled like chicken and something I couldn't name. On my best days, I believe people change. On my smartest days, I believe patterns don't lie. Tonight, I decided to remember both. "Thanks, kiddo," I said. "I appreciate you taking care of me. If I was going to stop being an enabler, I didn't have to start a war. I just had to start noticing and keep records." Outside, a wind chime tinkled against the fence. Inside, the clock said 9:14. I lifted my spoon, felt the heat on my lip, and made a quiet promise to myself. No more excuses, no more blurred lines. If this house is going to be safe again, it'll be because I made it that way. I don't know what time it was exactly, maybe close to 10, but the house had that hush it gets after the TV's been off for an hour and the neighborhood is gone still. The kind of quiet that makes your own heartbeat sound like an alarm. Lily was still in the kitchen. I'd told her I was going to rest, but I stopped halfway up the stairs, listening. A drawer opened. The clink of a spoon against ceramic. The faint hiss of the stove. Ordinary sounds, but my instincts refused to call them ordinary. 30 years in the army doesn't leave you. It just goes dormant until the world gives you a reason to wake it up again. I moved back toward the hallway where I could see her reflection in the window over the sink. She was standing at the counter, two bowls lined up side by side. Steam rose between them like fog. Her back was to me, shoulders rigid, movements too deliberate for someone making soup. Then I saw it, the smallest thing, but it changed everything. From her pocket, she took out a little glass vial, no bigger than her thumb. The kitchen light caught it for half a second, and I saw something white shimmer inside. She unscrewed the cap and tipped the vial toward the bowl on the left. The powder slid in like it had done this before, dissolving instantly as she stirred. My throat went dry. For a moment I thought maybe I'd imagined it, that it was salt or medicine. Then I remembered the texts. Rest. You'll feel better after a little broth. The unknown C. The way she'd asked about my will, that was the moment my brain stopped making excuses. I didn't gasp, didn't step forward, didn't say her name. I just watched. Years of training told me one thing. The first move gets you killed. The second move saves you. When she turned toward the pantry, humming softly, I moved. 3 steps quiet, controlled, precise. I swapped the bowls. Left for right, poison for clean. The steam felt hot against my knuckles. My pulse was hammering so loud I swore she'd hear it. 10 seconds, maybe less. Then I was back where I'd been, leaning on the doorframe, pretending to check my phone. She came out carrying a loaf of bread, smiling like a Hallmark commercial. "Perfect timing," she said. "Everything's ready." I nodded, because words were too risky. She carried both bowls to the table and set the one from the left, the one she'd seasoned, in front of her usual chair. Habit is a dangerous thing. She knew mine. She never considered I'd learn hers. "Sit, Dad," she said. Cheerful. Too cheerful. "Eat while it's hot." I sat across from her. The smell was familiar. Ginger, chicken, maybe parsley, but beneath it was something chemical, sharp, like the inside of a battery. I lifted my spoon, forced a small smile, and pretended to taste it. Lily watched me, eyes bright with concern, or maybe anticipation. "Better?" she asked. "Perfect," I said. "Just what I needed." She started eating, fast at first, then slower, her shoulders dropping like the tension was melting away. Mine was rising. Every swallow she took tightened the air in the room. Minutes passed like miles. The only sound was the clink of spoons against bowls and the hum of the refrigerator. I studied her face, the little twitch at the corner of her mouth, the way her pupils looked too wide under the light. My daughter was eating the same soup she'd meant for me, and she didn't know it yet. Part of me wanted to stop her. The other part remembered what it felt like to curl over the counter earlier, the pain in my gut, the way she'd said, "You trust me, right?" I decided to let life take its own inventory. When she finished, she dabbed her lips with a napkin. "You look better already," she said. "Yeah," I said. "Much better." The irony burned hotter than the soup. I pushed my chair back. "I think I'll get some rest. Let it settle." She nodded. "Of course, Dad. I'll clean up." Her voice cracked just a little on the last word. Upstairs, I stood by the window, watching the reflection of the kitchen below. Lily was moving slower now, holding her stomach once or twice, probably thinking it was indigestion. I should have felt guilt. I didn't. What I felt was proof. I'd spent months second-guessing myself, making excuses for her behavior, calling it stress or grief. But that vial, that simple white vial, was the truth in glass form. She hadn't come home to reconnect. She'd come home for the paperwork, the will, the accounts, the clean story she could sell when I was gone. I texted a single note to myself, time-stamped and saved. Observed white powder added to left bowl. Switched at 9:23 p.m. Subject unaware. It read like an entry in a field log. That's how I needed to think of it from now on. This wasn't family. It was evidence. Downstairs, I heard a small thud, maybe a dropped spoon, then the slow shuffle of footsteps toward the stairs. "Dad?" Lily called, her voice faint. "You still up?" I didn't answer. The sound of the bathroom door closing, running water, then silence. I stared at the glow of the street lamp through the window blinds and whispered to no one in particular. "Boundaries, Dan. Remember what Mia said. Love plus limits." It had taken me 58 years to learn that sometimes the limit is survival. That night, the house went quiet again. Same fridge hum, same clock tick. But for the first time, those sounds didn't feel safe. They felt like witnesses. By morning, the world outside looked normal again. Gray Ohio sky, mail truck whining down the street, the smell of wet asphalt after a light snow. But inside my house, everything felt off, like someone had rearranged the air while I slept. I didn't get much sleep, to be honest. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the glass vial tilting, that cloud of white sinking into the soup. I saw Lily's face, calm and sweet, as she stirred. I kept hearing my therapist's voice, "You can't fix someone who benefits from your silence." At 7:15, I went downstairs. The kitchen light was still on, and the air smelled faintly of ginger and bleach. Lily sat at the table, elbows pressed against the wood, pale and sweating. "Morning," I said carefully. She looked up like she'd just remembered who she was supposed to be. "Morning, Dad. God, I don't feel good. I think that soup last night messed me up." I poured myself coffee. "The soup?" "Yeah." She pressed her hand to her stomach. "Must have been the chicken. Maybe it was bad." Her voice had that defensive pitch, too high, too quick. I'd heard soldiers use it right before their stories fell apart. I sat across from her. The same table, same two bowls now stacked in the sink. One clean, one crusted. She didn't realize the difference yet. "You seemed fine last night," I said. I was. It hit later, like food poisoning or something. "Maybe you should see a doctor," I said, then added, "or a pharmacist. Sometimes people have reactions to medication." Her eyes flicked up at me fast, alert, scared. Then she smiled, and it was wrong in all the familiar ways. "You always worry too much, Dad." I took a sip of coffee and watched her wipe her mouth with trembling hands. I wasn't sure what I expected. guilt, remorse, panic, but what I saw was confusion. Maybe she didn't even understand what she'd used. Maybe someone else had told her what to do. Still, the poetic part of it, the justice, wasn't lost on me. The poison meant for me had turned on her. It wasn't satisfaction I felt. It was clarity. I've always been the kind of man who gives second chances. That's how I raised Lily, how I ran my unit, how I stayed married through the hard years. But second chances mean nothing to people who see kindness as permission. She groaned and stood up slowly. "I'm gonna lie down," she said. "Good idea," I said. "Get some rest." When she was gone, I washed the dishes by hand. It was a way to keep my mind moving while I catalogued what had happened. The left bowl had a faint ring of residue white at the edges, chalky when I rubbed it with my thumb. I rinsed it carefully, then bagged the sponge and tossed it into the outside trash can. Evidence, just in case. I went to my study and opened a fresh notebook. Military habit. Log what you can't trust your memory to hold. Entry, 9:23 p.m. Observed Lily adding unknown white substance to left bowl. Switched bowls during pantry trip. 7:15 a.m. Subject displaying symptoms, nausea, sweating. I closed the notebook and sat back, staring at the photo of my wife on the shelf. Margaret's smile looked patient, like she was waiting for me to catch up to something obvious. Maybe she'd seen it in Lily long before I did the charm that came right before manipulation. The apologies that only fixed appearances. The doorbell rang, and I nearly jumped. Through the window, I saw Gus, my neighbor, the retired cop who still mowed his lawn in a perfect grid. I opened the door, pretending nothing was wrong. "Morning, Dan," he said, squinting at me. "You look like you've seen a ghost. Just didn't sleep much." He nodded toward the driveway. "Your daughter's car still here? Thought she left early. Saw her stumble out back around 6. Looked rough." "She's sick," I said. He frowned. "Hope it's not something serious. Want me to grab something from the pharmacy?" I hesitated. "No, she'll be fine." But Gus wasn't really asking about medicine. He was the kind of man who could read tension the way others read weather. "You need anything?" he said finally. "You knock." "Thanks, Gus. I mean that." After he left, I checked my phone. There was a new message from an unknown number. "Unknown. You handled it wrong. We'll talk soon." It wasn't from Lily. She couldn't type that cleanly even on her best day. My gut told me this was the C from last night. So there it was, confirmation that this wasn't just a bad daughter's bad idea. Someone else was involved. I saved the message, screenshotted it, and emailed it to myself under a new subject line. External threat. It has been this off. Then I took a slow breath and forced my mind to do what it always did in chaos: organize. Threat. Motive. Evidence. Plan. Threat. Unknown associate, possibly male. Motive. Financial inheritance. Property, life insurance. Evidence. The vial. The switched bowls. The text messages. Plan. Survive. Document. Strike when ready. I checked on Lily once more before lunch. She was asleep, curled on the couch under a blanket, face pale as wax. A part of me still wanted to pull the blanket higher, tuck her in the way I used to when she was little. But another part, the one that had spent decades in war zones, knew you don't lower your weapon until the enemy's disarmed. I let her sleep. Upstairs, I opened my laptop and began typing everything into a document labeled Chronology of Events. If something happened to me, I wanted the truth to be easy to find. By afternoon, the pain in my gut from the night before was gone. My head was clear. My fear had turned into something colder focus. I knew now what had to come next. Find out where that vial came from, and who C really was. Lily might have thought she was in control, but she just taught me the most important lesson of my life. Sometimes the only way to take back your power is to stop pretending you still owe anyone forgiveness. By the third day, the house didn't feel like mine anymore. Every room carried a trace of something sour: fear, guilt, maybe just the smell of betrayal still hanging in the air. I'd spent 2 nights replaying the same question. How long had I been pretending not to see what was right in front of me? When the doorbell rang that morning, I half expected another text instead. But it was Avery Chen, my attorney. I'd called her late the night before, my voice low, explaining that I needed to review some estate matters. She showed up early, sharp gray suit, black coffee in one hand, and the look of someone who had already read between my lines. "Dan," she said, stepping inside. "You said this was urgent?" It is. I led her to the kitchen, the same place where everything had started. The air still smelled faintly of disinfectant and deceit. She listened as I told her what happened, every detail, from the texts to the vial, to the way Lily had been sick the next morning. Avery didn't flinch. Lawyers who deal with family fraud never do. You have documentation? She asked. I handed her my notebook, the one I'd started after that first night. She flipped through the pages, nodding. Good. Keep writing everything. Timestamps, quotes, anything physical. You're building a timeline. That's your shield. I feel like I've been living in a crime scene, I said. You have, she replied, and you're handling it better than most. But Dan. She looked up at me, her tone softening. You need to protect yourself legally, not just emotionally. Change your will immediately. Lock down your bank accounts, and until we confirm what she gave you, don't eat or drink anything she touches. I laughed once, dry and hollow. You're serious. Deadly. The word landed like a small explosion between us. She explained how elder financial abuse often starts with emotional manipulation, gaslighting, guilt, weaponized love. You're not paranoid, she said. You've been groomed to doubt yourself. That line hit harder than I wanted it to. Groomed to doubt myself. That's exactly what it was. I remember staring at the paperwork spread out between us. Account numbers, property deeds. The old will Margaret and I had signed when Lily was still a teenager. I used to think of it as a promise, that everything we built would become her safety net. Now it looked like motive on letterhead. Avery pushed her coffee aside. Dan, if you really want to stop this, we file new documents today. Remove her as beneficiary. Transfer power of attorney to me, temporarily. Install home surveillance audio and video. Ohio's a one-party consent state. You only need your permission to record. Do you understand what I'm saying? I record everything, I said quietly. If she comes back. If she says anything, proof. Exactly. For the first time in days, I felt something like control returning. Not relief, just direction. I'd been standing in the same spot for too long, waiting for someone to save me. Now I was moving. As she filled out forms, I found myself saying it out loud without thinking. I think I've been an enabler my whole life. Every time she pushed, I let it slide because I didn't want to be the bad guy. Avery looked up from the paperwork. You weren't being nice, Dan. You were being controlled. That's the difference. I nodded slowly. Was I enabling her toxic behavior all this time by being too nice? Yes, she said simply. And you're done now. That line hit something raw inside me, grief, maybe, or shame. But underneath it was a strange calm. The kind that comes right before you start fighting back. After Avery left, I installed the security cameras she'd ordered online, one in each corner of the main floor. Small, discreet, motion-triggered, the kind that saved footage to the cloud even if the power went out. Then I bolted a small metal switch beneath my armchair in the living room, a silent panic button wired to the alarm company. Love plus limits, my therapist had said. That's what boundaries were supposed to be. For years, I'd mistaken love for endurance, like surviving her moods was proof I was a good father. I used to believe forgiveness was the same as safety, but forgiveness doesn't stop a knife. That night, I sat in the quiet glow of my living room, the cameras blinking faintly like patient eyes. For the first time since this nightmare started, I felt something close to steady. I wasn't planning revenge. I was building protection. And if she came back, if they came back, I'd be ready. 2 days later, I woke up to sunlight cutting across the blinds like prison bars. The house was quiet again, too quiet, like it was holding its breath. Lily's car was gone. No note, no text, nothing but the faint smell of her perfume in the hallway and the impression of her shoes by the door. I should have felt relief, but instead, I felt something heavier. She'd left before, but this time felt different, like retreat, not escape. And I knew enough about strategy to understand. When someone retreats, it's rarely surrender. It's preparation. Avery called around 10 a.m. sharp. Dan, I've been looking into your daughter's finances. I sat down at my desk, heart thudding. And she's not alone in this, she said flatly. There's a man, Cole Whitman, 32, multiple aliases, history of real estate fraud and identity theft. He's been involved with several women who later tried to access or liquidate family property. Let me guess, I said. Lily fits the pattern, perfectly. He targets women who have a parent with assets but poor emotional boundaries. Someone he can manipulate through guilt and codependency. Guilt, I muttered. That's her favorite weapon. I trained her too well. Avery ignored the self-blame. Dan, I found something else. 2 weeks ago, Lily met with a real estate consultant about a potential property sale. She listed your address, and yesterday, Cole submitted an inquiry to a cash buyer network, no inspections, fast close. That means they were preparing to sell your house immediately after. Well, after something happened to you. I felt my jaw tighten. So this wasn't spontaneous. It was a plan. Exactly. They've been laying groundwork for months. Phone records, bank queries, insurance policy lookups. She's been grooming the system while he pulled the strings. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling fan turning lazily above me. I thought about that night in the kitchen, how precise she'd been with the vial, how she'd smiled while stirring poison. That kind of precision doesn't come from panic. It comes from rehearsal, Avery continued. I've already filed a temporary estate freeze. It'll prevent property transfer or access to your accounts without your authorization. But Dan, this is getting serious. You need to assume they'll escalate. Then I'll escalate too, I said. There was a pause. Careful. You're not a soldier anymore. No, I said quietly. But I remember how to defend a perimeter. After the call, I walked next door to talk to Gus, my retired cop neighbor. He was out front, trimming his hedges, still wearing the same flannel jacket he'd worn for a decade. I told him the basics, nothing about the poison yet, just that my daughter had gotten tangled with the wrong kind of man. Gus rubbed his chin. I knew something smelled off when I saw that black SUV sitting outside your house last week. Tinted windows, engine running. Didn't think much of it then. Cole drives a black SUV, I said. Figures. He crossed his arms. You want me to keep an eye out? I still got a police radio. Old habits die hard. Appreciate it, Gus. Just don't confront them if they show up. Record, call it in, then knock on my door. He gave me that look ex-cops give when they know they're going to ignore your advice. Then nodded anyway. Back inside, I sat down at my computer and pulled up the security footage from the last 2 nights. Nothing unusual. The system worked perfectly: timestamps, motion detection, remote storage. I even saved a few clips of myself testing it, just to make sure the timestamps lined up. Still, something inside me wouldn't rest. I checked my phone again, no messages from Lily. But there was one new text from a number with no name. Same area code as before. Unknown. You made things harder than they needed to be. I took a screenshot, attached it to my evidence folder, and emailed it to Avery with the subject: continued harassment. Her reply came 5 minutes later. Good. Keep logging everything. I'll have my investigator run the number. By evening, the sky had turned that bruised purple Ohio gets right before it storms. I poured myself a drink, my first in months, and sat at the kitchen table where it all began. The wood grain was still marked by faint scratches from the night I'd gripped it too hard, waiting for the pain to pass. It's funny, people think the hardest part of betrayal is the act itself. It's not. It's the echo. The endless questions. How long was she planning it? How many lies did I believe because they were easier than the truth? That night, I opened the folder labeled Essential Documents. I looked through the tabs: insurance, pension, deeds, investments. Every dollar I'd worked for neatly recorded in black and white. I used to feel pride flipping through it. Now it felt like reading my own obituary. I closed the binder and whispered to myself, no more guilt. Guilt was the leash she'd held my whole life. Every mistake she made was somehow my fault: too strict, too absent, too controlling, too forgiving. She was right about one thing. I was controlling, but not in the way she meant. I controlled the chaos she brought into every room, the emotional fires she started and left burning. I kept pretending if I was patient enough, she'd come around. That's what enablers do, they confuse endurance with love. So, I decided to stop enduring. Before bed, I walked the perimeter of the house, locked windows, armed the alarm, checked the motion sensors. When I passed the kitchen window, I noticed something across the street. A car idling in the dark, headlights off. Black SUV. My pulse spiked. I turned off my own lights and stood behind the curtain, watching. The driver didn't move for nearly a minute, then pulled away slowly, tires whispering against the asphalt. I waited until the tail lights disappeared before I picked up my phone. Me to Avery. He was outside. Avery. Cole? Me. Black SUV. Didn't get the plate. Avery. I'm sending my investigator tonight. Don't open the door for anyone. I stared at that last message until the screen dimmed. Before I went upstairs, I checked on the silent alarm switch beneath my armchair still working. I pressed it once to test. The system chirped softly, confirming the signal. That small click was the most comforting sound I'd heard in days. Outside, thunder rolled far off over the city. I sat in the dark, watching the rain gather on the windows, and realized something simple but true. Survival isn't just staying alive. It's staying alert, even when you want to close your eyes. Somewhere out there, Lily and Cole were planning their next move. They thought they were hunting a broken old man. They didn't realize I'd already set the trap. It was a little past 9 when the storm finally hit. Wind howled against the windows like it was looking for a way in, and thunder rolled close enough to shake the picture frames. I sat in the armchair, the one with the silent alarm switch underneath, and waited. Every instinct in me said tonight was the night. I'd been living in alert mode for days, checking locks, scanning the footage, logging every text, but something about that quiet before the rain felt too deliberate, like the world itself was holding still so I could hear the danger coming. At 9:43, the motion sensor pinged. Front porch, 2 figures. One tall, broad-shouldered, one smaller, familiar. Lily, and the man from the black SUV. Cole Whitman looked exactly like the type Avery had warned me about, handsome enough to fool people who mistake charm for character. He had the kind of smile that sold bad investments, and the eyes of someone who'd never once been afraid of consequences. They didn't knock. The door handle rattled once, then twice. Then came the sound of a hard kickwood cracking under force. The new deadbolt held, but the frame splintered loud enough to make my heart jump. I didn't move. I wanted them inside. Dad. Lily's voice sliced through the noise. We need to talk. Talk. That word again. In our family, talk always meant confrontation disguised as conversation. I stayed silent, letting them think I was upstairs, maybe asleep. Another kick. The door burst inward, half hanging from its hinges. Cole stepped in first, scanning the room like a wolf testing territory. Lily followed, pale and wild-eyed. She looked different, makeup smudged, hair wet from the rain, desperation clinging to her like perfume gone bad. Dad, she said breathlessly, please, let's just fix this. I stayed seated in the chair, hands resting on the armrests. Calm, steady. You already tried fixing it, I said. With poison. Cole's head snapped toward me. So, you know, he said, voice flat. I know everything, I replied. He smirked, walking closer. Then you know how this ends. You sign a few papers, transfer the house, and we disappear. No police, no mess. Clean break. I looked at Lily. This is who you sold your soul to. Don't make it sound like that, she snapped. You left me no choice. You were never going to give me what's mine. What's yours? I said, voice low. You mean the house I built? The savings I earned? The life insurance you planned to cash in on while I was still warm in the ground? She flinched. Cole didn't. Enough speeches, he said, setting a leather briefcase on the coffee table. Sign these. Now. He pulled out a stack of forged documents, transfer deeds, notarized signatures that looked disturbingly close to mine. He threw a pen on top of them like a weapon. I glanced toward the ceiling corners. The cameras blinked faintly, recording everything. I have a better idea, I said quietly. You two keep talking. Cole leaned in. Old man, this isn't a negotiation. You're right, I said. It's a confession. He frowned. And for the first time, I saw it, the flicker of uncertainty when a predator realizes the prey isn't afraid anymore. Lily's voice broke. Dad, please. We just need to make things right. Cole said this was the only way. I turned my eyes on her, steady as stone. The only way to what? Steal my house? My pension? My peace? Her hands trembled. I didn't want to hurt you. This is what it has happened. You already did, I said. But I survived. That's what's going to hurt you more than anything. Cole slammed his hand on the table, making the pen jump. Sign the damn papers. I didn't blink. My thumb pressed lightly under the armrest, the silent alarm click, small and final. Let me guess, I said. You learned all this from the same guy who told her poison was foolproof. Cole sneered. You think the cops will believe you? You're a lonely, paranoid old man. She's your daughter. People believe blood before logic. Maybe, I said. But cameras don't care about family. His eyes darted around the room, catching the tiny blinking lights in the corners. You recorded this? They are telling at their round. Everything, I said. From the break-in to the threats. One-party consent, Ohio law. You should have done your homework. Lily's breath hitched. Oh my God. The sound of sirens cut through the storm. Faint at first, then growing louder, closer. Cole spun toward the window, panic finally replacing arrogance. What did you do? I called for help, I said. 5 minutes ago. He turned back, face twisting in fury. You think this is over? I stood then, slow but certain. It already is. The blue and red lights splashed against the curtains. Doors slammed outside. Voices shouted commands. The house filled with the echo of justice. Lily backed toward the hallway, tears streaking her face. Dad, please, don't let them take me. You stopped being my daughter the night you poisoned my food, I said, my voice steady but breaking somewhere deep inside. Cole lunged toward the door, but it was too late. The officers came through in a rush, 3 of them, guns drawn but controlled. Hands where we can see them, one shouted. Cole froze, then slowly raised his hands. Lily sobbed, collapsing to her knees. As they cuffed him, he looked back at me, sneering through the chaos. You think you've won, old man? You just destroyed your own blood. No, I said quietly. I saved her from becoming you. They led them both out into the rain. The flashing lights reflected off the puddles, painting the driveway in red and blue. For a long time after the cars pulled away, I stood in the broken doorway, rain blowing in, my heart finally slowing down. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't afraid, just tired. I shut the door, or what was left of it, and whispered into the silence. It's over. But part of me already knew it wasn't. Not yet. The night they arrested Lily and Cole, the rain didn't stop until morning. I sat on the living room floor, surrounded by the wreckage, the broken doorframe, scattered papers, the faint metallic smell of adrenaline that still hung in the air. My hands were steady, but my heart wasn't. You'd think victory would feel cleaner, but it doesn't. Justice has a taste, and it's bitter before it's sweet. Detective Reynolds stayed behind after the uniforms took them away. He was one of those cops who didn't talk more than necessary, square jaw, tired eyes. The kind of man who'd seen too many families eat themselves alive. Mr. Mercer, he said, jotting notes into a worn leather pad. We've got enough here for several felonies. Conspiracy, attempted murder, extortion, forced entry. We'll hold them separately to avoid collusion. I nodded, staring at the splinters on the carpet. How long will it take? Depends on how quickly they start talking, he said. But based on what I saw, the evidence you gathered is airtight. You did everything right. Everything right. The words didn't feel like praise, they felt like a post-mortem. Once he left, the silence settled back in, heavy as smoke. I stood in the doorway for a long time, watching the rain trail down the windows. Every drop felt like it was washing something off the house, but not off me. You can't wash off betrayal. You can only document it. By noon, Avery arrived with a stack of folders under her arm, and that same unflappable calm she always carried into chaos. Dan, she said, looking around at the mess. I came as soon as I got the call. Are you hurt? No. Just done pretending I'm not. Quote, she nodded like she understood more than I'd said. Good, because now it's time to finish what we started. We spread her folders across my dining table, new estate papers, amended powers of attorney, and the fresh revocation of Lily's inheritance. The legal words were cold and sterile, but they were also armor. I signed every page slowly, deliberately, like sealing doors behind me. Avery reviewed each signature, initialing where needed. Once I file these, she said, your assets are locked. The house, the accounts, the insurance. She's legally removed from everything. I hesitated at the final line. It feels like signing a death certificate, I said quietly. It is, she replied. But it's hers, not yours. The truth in her tone hurt more than the betrayal itself. When the paperwork was done, she slid a new document toward me. Security upgrade authorization. Cameras, reinforced locks, alarm integration, remote access, all recorded under your name. You'll get cloud backups and live alerts. I almost laughed. You sound like a general briefing for war. Dan, she said softly. You were at war. The only difference is the battlefield looked like a family dinner table. That line hit hard enough to make me look away. Outside, Gus's truck pulled into the driveway. He stepped out holding a new deadbolt and a set of tools. "Thought you might need a hand," he called through the open doorway. "Appreciate it," I said. Gus took one look at Avery and nodded politely. "So you're the lawyer. I'm the retired cop. Between us, the man's in good hands." Avery smiled faintly. "Then let's make sure he stays that way." They replaced the lock while I brewed coffee, the simple domestic act feeling strangely foreign now. When Gus was done, he tightened the last screw and said, "I've seen cases like this, Dan. Family turns ugly, and people start thinking blood gives them a free pass. You did the right thing." I wanted to believe that, but the right thing still felt like grief wearing armor. After they left, I called Detective Reynolds to confirm the next steps. "We're processing them now," he said. "Cole's trying to pin it all on your daughter. She's denying everything, but the recordings are too clear. We'll get convictions." "Good," I said. "Keep me posted." The moment I hung up, the house felt too quiet again. I realized how much noise guilt makes when it's finally gone. It leaves a vacuum you can almost hear. That evening, I sat at my desk and opened a new document labeled Statement of Facts Prepared for Court. I started typing every detail from the break-in, every threat, every moment of fear I'd tried to suppress. Writing it down wasn't about anger anymore, it was about control. If I could name it, I could contain it. Halfway through, I stopped and looked at the photo of Lily on the bookshelf. High school graduation, cap tilted, smile wide. I remember how proud I was that day, how certain I'd done something right as a father. I couldn't reconcile that girl with the woman who'd stood in my living room demanding my signature at gunpoint, no weapon in her hand, but one in every word. The clock ticked louder than usual. I reached for my notebook, flipped to the latest page, and wrote, "Boundary achieved. Emotional detachment. Physical security in progress." It was the kind of sentence a therapist would call progress, and a soldier would call debriefing. At 10 p.m., the new alarm system chirped online, each sensor lighting up green on the app. The cameras blinked in sequence like steady heartbeats. For the first time since this began, I didn't feel exposed. I felt ready. I poured myself a glass of water, not whiskey. My hands didn't shake. Maybe this is what healing looks like, not forgetting, not forgiving, but fortifying. When I finally went upstairs, the reflection in the hallway mirror caught me off guard. I didn't see the broken father anymore. I saw someone who had taken back control, piece by piece. Before bed, I whispered the same words I'd written that morning. No more pretending. The rain had stopped. The air outside was clean, almost gentle. Somewhere between exhaustion and resolve, I realized I'd crossed the invisible line between survival and strength. Justice wasn't finished, but I was no longer afraid to face it. 3 weeks later, I found myself sitting in a courtroom that smelled faintly of old wood and disinfectant. The air was thick with that quiet kind of tension only justice can bring, the kind that makes even the innocent sweat. Across from me, Lily sat at the defense table in a beige jumpsuit, her wrists resting on the edge like she was still deciding whether to play the victim or the daughter. Beside her was Cole, expressionless, his arrogance muted by handcuffs. When the judge entered, everyone stood. The sound of shuffling feet was deafening. I hadn't seen Lily since the night of the arrest. I'd spent those 3 weeks bracing myself for this moment, rehearsing what I'd say, what I wouldn't say, and how I'd keep my voice steady. The prosecution laid out the evidence methodically. The recordings from my security system, the threatening texts, the forged property transfers, the vial with trace residue from her kitchen. It was all there, cold, undeniable, clinical. No emotion, just data points painting a portrait of betrayal. When they called me to the stand, I took a slow breath and stood. Avery caught my eye from the front row, her nod small but firm. I sat, swore in, and began to tell my story, not the way it happened, but the way it felt. "I didn't think it could happen to me," I said. "I thought love was protection. I thought family meant safety. Turns out, sometimes family is the blind spot predators aim for. Where's the prod?" I could feel the whole room listening, not to the crime, but to the part everyone recognizes: the disbelief, the guilt, the moment you realize you've been lied to by someone you'd die for. I glanced at Lily. She was staring at her lap, tears streaking her face. Maybe they were real, maybe they weren't. I'd stopped trying to tell the difference. When the prosecutor asked me what lesson I took from all this, I didn't have to think. "Boundaries," I said. They're not walls to keep people out. They're fences to keep the poison from spreading in. There was a silence afterward that felt almost merciful. When I stepped down, I didn't look back at her again. I'd already done that 1,000 times in my head. The verdict came 2 hours later. Guilty on all counts: conspiracy to commit murder, attempted poisoning, fraud, and extortion. Cole's sentence was 10 years. Lily's was 6, with the possibility of parole in 4. As they let her out, she turned to me. Her voice broke when she said, "Dad, I'm sorry. Please don't hate me." I stood, calm but hollow. "I don't hate you," I said quietly. "I just can't save you anymore." That was the truth. Forgiveness wasn't the issue, it was capacity. There's only so much you can rebuild when the foundation itself has cracked. Afterward, Avery walked with me down the courthouse steps. The wind off Lake Erie was sharp, but it felt like a reset. "You did well," she said. "Feels like losing and winning at the same time," I admitted. She gave a small, knowing smile. That's what closure feels like for people who loved their enemy. We stopped by her car. "Avery," I asked, "why did you take this case?" She hesitated, then said, "Because my mother went through something similar. Different crime, same pattern, gaslighting, manipulation, financial control. I promised myself I'd help people who didn't see it coming. That hit harder than I expected." It wasn't just law to her, it was legacy. Over the next few weeks, life began to settle into something that resembled normal. I sold the house, the one that had become both crime scene and tombstone, and moved to a smaller place near a quiet lake in southern Ohio. A new neighborhood, new neighbors, no ghosts. Gus helped me haul furniture one last time. "You sure about this?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "That house held too many memories I didn't want to keep." He nodded. "You did the hard thing, Dan. Most folks wouldn't have had the guts." That night, I unpacked slowly, choosing what to keep. Margaret's photo went on the new mantel. The old armchair, yes. The one with the silent alarm button sat by the window overlooking the lake. It didn't feel like a weapon anymore. It felt like a reminder that safety isn't paranoia. It's wisdom earned the hard way. Weeks turned into months. I joined a local veterans support group, helped organize workshops for seniors on recognizing financial manipulation. Avery's firm donated materials. Gus dropped by on weekends with fishing gear and terrible coffee. One afternoon, I got a letter from the state correctional facility. It was from Lily. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity wins over closure sometimes. She wrote about reflection, therapy, faith. She said she'd finally understood what I meant by boundaries, that she'd been poisoned long before she ever touched that vial, poisoned by the idea that love meant entitlement. I read it twice, then folded it carefully and placed it in a drawer, not to forget, but to remember that some bridges don't burn. They just stop leading anywhere. Avery called a week later. "The Veterans Fund used your donation to start a family abuse awareness program. They named it after your late wife, the Margaret Mercer Initiative." For the first time in years, the news didn't sting, it soothed. "She'd like that," I said. As the sun set that evening, I sat on the porch, the lake reflecting gold and silver ripples. I thought about everything that had happened, the betrayal, the fear, the fight, the justice, and realized something simple but profound. Taking back power isn't about revenge. It's about peace. And peace, I've learned, isn't what you get when the storm ends. It's what you build when you finally stop waiting for the thunder to return. 6 months after the trial, I woke up to birdsong instead of sirens. The world outside my window looked deceptively simple, sunlight glinting off the lake, a fisherman's boat cutting through the glassy surface, and a pair of kids chasing a stray soccer ball down the road. It was peaceful, almost too peaceful, like life was testing if I'd learned to live without the noise. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat on the porch, the wood still cool under my bare feet. For the first time in what felt like years, I didn't start the day checking my security cameras or scrolling through court updates. The cameras were still there, sure, but now they were just tools, not lifelines. I wasn't waiting for threats anymore, I was living beyond them. Every now and then, I'd think about Lily. It's impossible not to. She wasn't just my daughter. She was the embodiment of everything I'd tried to protect, and everything I failed to save. The human brain has a way of trying to rewrite pain, soften the edges, make it more palatable. But the truth doesn't change just because we wish it would. I'd stopped asking myself why she did it. That question used to keep me up at night. I've learned that in toxic relationships, family or otherwise, the why rarely matters. It's not logic, it's pattern. Some people hurt you not because they hate you, but because they love control more than they love connection. That's the thing about narcissism, it feeds on guilt. And I'd been its favorite meal for decades. Avery called that morning, just to check in. "You sound better," she said. "I am," I told her. "I'm finally getting used to the silence." No, there was not a grieve. She laughed softly. "That's the hardest part for most people, the quiet after survival. It can feel like a void. It doesn't feel empty anymore," I said. "Just honest." We talked about the Veterans Program, the one named after Margaret. Apparently, the initiative was expanding, offering legal and emotional support for seniors facing family exploitation. Avery told me there was a waiting list of people wanting to volunteer. "You started something good, Dan," she said. "Most people just survive trauma. You turned yours into a blueprint." I didn't have a clever answer for that. I just thanked her and promised to visit her office next month. After the call, I found myself thinking back to something my therapist once said during Margaret's illness. Love without boundaries becomes martyrdom. Boundaries without love become walls. The trick is learning the balance. Back then, I didn't get it. I thought boundaries meant punishment, like closing the door meant giving up on someone. Now I know it means protecting the parts of yourself that still deserve peace. Some afternoons, I drive out to the local community center to help other vets with paperwork or just to talk. There's always one older guy in the corner, stubborn as I used to be, saying, "She's still my daughter," or "He's still my son." I listen, nod, then tell them the truth no one wants to hear. You can love someone and still keep them out of your life. Love doesn't mean access. Forgiveness doesn't mean return. One evening, after a session, Gus and I sat by the dock, watching the sunset bleed into the water. He cracked open 2 root beers and handed me one. "You ever think she'll come back?" he asked. "I think she already did," I said. "In her letters, she's searching for redemption. But redemption isn't something I can give her, it's something she has to earn." He nodded. "And if she does?" I took a long breath. "Then I'll listen. But I won't rebuild the bridge. Some bridges collapse for a reason." Thanks for watching. This has been Link. We sat there for a long time, saying nothing. The lake rippled softly, the kind of quiet that hums rather than echoes. It's strange, peace doesn't announce itself. It arrives like forgiveness, quiet and almost invisible. Later that night, I opened my drawer and pulled out Lily's last letter. I didn't read it again. I just held it. The paper had softened from age, and part of me wondered if it was time to let it go. But I didn't. Maybe someday I will. Not out of anger, out of acceptance. Before turning in, I walked through the house one last time, turning off lights. Everything had a place again, no chaos, no shadows waiting in corners. On the mantel, Margaret's photo still smiled back at me, her eyes the same gentle blue as the morning sky. I whispered, "We made it, Maggie." And for once, it didn't feel like a lie, because the truth is, healing isn't cinematic. It's quiet, repetitive, sometimes boring. It's making coffee without shaking hands. It's going an entire week without checking your phone for threats. It's remembering that the absence of chaos isn't emptiness, it's safety. That's what I'd tell anyone listening. You don't reclaim power in a single moment. You reclaim it piece by piece each time you choose calm over chaos, boundaries over guilt, self-respect over fear. And when you finally stop waiting for the next disaster, that's when peace finds you. For me, it came not with revenge, but with stillness. The storm had passed. The silence wasn't punishment anymore, it was home. A year has passed since the trial, and sometimes it still feels like I'm living someone else's story. People see me at the cafe in town or volunteering at the Veterans Center and assume I've always been this calm, this steady. They don't see the ghosts that sit quietly beside me when the day slows down. Healing isn't about forgetting, it's about learning how to live with what you remember. Life in the lake house has become a rhythm I didn't know I needed. Mornings start with black coffee and the sound of geese cutting across the water. The air smells clean, like rain and cedar. Most days I write nothing grand, just notes, reflections, fragments of thoughts that used to wake me at 3 a.m., when the guilt was still loud. I've been thinking a lot about power, the kind that doesn't come from anger or control but from self-respect. For most of my life, I mistook silence for peace. I thought enduring pain quietly made me noble. Now I see it for what it was, fear dressed up as patience. The real power isn't in holding it all together. It's in knowing when to let things fall apart. The Margaret Mercer Initiative has grown faster than any of us expected. We've helped dozens of seniors recognize financial abuse, rewrite their wills safely, and reconnect with family under healthier terms. Avery still oversees the legal side, but these days, she's more friend than lawyer. Sometimes we grab lunch after a seminar, and she teases me for becoming a poster boy for emotional boundaries. I always tell her that's the first time I've ever been called emotionally evolved. One afternoon, she told me something that stuck. You know, Dan, the people who hurt us the most don't take our power away, they just convince us we never had any. That line hit me like truth often does. Quietly, but permanently, I still get letters from Lily. Not often, maybe every couple of months. The tone has changed. Less pleading, more understanding. She's in a prison therapy program now, working through what she calls her disease of entitlement. Her words, not mine. She says she's learning to see me not as an obstacle, but as a boundary she needed to face. I haven't written back. Not yet. Maybe I will one day. There's no revenge in that decision. Just clarity. Some conversations require both people to be healed, and we're not there yet. Gus still stops by every Thursday. We sit on the porch, share root beers, and talk about everything but the past. He's teaching me how to fish, though I think he enjoys the company more than the catch. You ever realize how quiet peace is? He said last week. Watching the sunset fade into the lake. Most people don't know what to do with it when they finally have it. He's right. For a long time, peace felt like an empty room I didn't know how to live in. Now, it feels like home. Every night before bed, I do a small ritual. I lock the doors, check the lights, and sit for a minute by the window. I don't do it out of paranoia anymore. I do it as a reminder. Security isn't about fear, it's about gratitude. The locks aren't there to keep danger out. They're there to remind me that I'm safe inside. I've stopped asking for a happy ending. I think those belong in stories where the pain is clean and the lessons come neatly wrapped. Real life doesn't work that way. It's messy, uneven, full of sharp edges and quiet grace. Sometimes, when the moonlight hits the lake just right, I think of Margaret. I still talk to her, in that quiet way you talk to people who live in memory. I tell her about the families we've helped, the letters from Lily, the neighbors who bring over pie just because. And I imagine her smile, the same patient, knowing smile she wore when life was still simple. The other night, I wrote something down that felt like the truest thing I've learned through all of this. Forgiveness isn't letting someone back in. It's letting yourself move forward. That's what taking back power really means. Not revenge, not winning, just reclaiming your ability to live without fear. I know now that love doesn't mean sacrificing yourself for someone else's comfort. It means building a life sturdy enough that you never have to apologize for protecting it. So, this is my quiet kind of victory. Not the cinematic kind, not the explosive climax. Just peace earned, kept, and shared. If anyone listening has ever been through something similar, this is what I'd tell them. You're not weak for hoping they'll change, but you're strongest the moment you realize you don't have to wait for it. The storm is over now. The locks are steady, the water outside is calm, and for the first time in years, I'm not surviving, I'm living. If there's one thing this entire nightmare taught me, it's that protecting your peace is not cruelty, it's clarity. For years, I mistook endurance for love. I thought being patient with manipulation somehow made me noble. That family meant forgiveness at any cost. But the truth is, love without boundaries becomes self-destruction. And guilt is the currency that toxic people use to keep you in debt. The biggest lesson I learned is that no is a complete sentence. You don't owe anyone an explanation for protecting your sanity, your space, or your safety. Setting boundaries doesn't make you heartless. It means you finally learned the value of your own peace. Healing isn't loud or glamorous. It's choosing quiet mornings over constant chaos, self-respect over obligation, and peace over guilt. If you've ever been through something like this, know that it's okay to walk away even from blood. Family isn't defined by who shares your DNA. It's defined by who respects your peace. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone toxic is to remove their access to you entirely. So, tell me AITA for cutting my own daughter out of my life after she tried to destroy it. Or maybe you've faced something similar. Have you ever had to protect yourself from someone who was supposed to love you? How did you find your peace again? Share your thoughts below. Maybe your story will help someone else realize they don't have to keep bleeding just to prove they care.